Alright guys, so this problem they want us to graph y is equal to tangent x plus pi over 4, and the interval that they want us to graph that in is from 0 all the way up to 3 pi. Now if you take a look at this graph that's given, this is the original tangent function that you're looking at. You can see that you have asymptotes that are running at negative pi over 2. So that's this one over on this side. And then you have one asymptote at pi over 2. And then there's another one at 3 pi over 2. And then of course you also have asymptotes that are running over on the left hand side. But we're mainly only going to be focusing on the function from 0 all the way up to 3 pi. So how do you graph this? Well, this is what we're going to do. Look at the problem that they're giving you in this. They're saying that y is equal to tangent x plus pi over 4. So the fact that there is a positive sign in the parentheses, what that tells us is that we're going to shift the graph by a factor of pi over 4. So we're going to take each one of those asymptotes, which we've already highlighted, and we're going to take each one of those center points. So one of the points is at negative pi, the other one is at the origin, then the next point is at pi, and then there's another one that's at 2 pi. We're going to take each one of those points and we're going to shift that to the left by a factor of pi over 4. Now from the class discussions, you probably remember that the distance from 0 up to pi over 2 is in degrees is 90 degrees. So if you split that in two, that means that you have two 45-degree angles in there. And then the distance from pi over 2 up to pi is also 90 degrees. And again, you have two 45-degree angles in there. Now, you might be looking at this, you're like, well, do we need to do that for each one of the asymptotes, or can we only look at the function from 0 up to 3 pi? And the answer is, I always just look at one of the asymptotes on the left, so, that's the first one that we have there. And I shift that one a little bit to the left, just so I can see how the graph looks like. But I'm not going to worry about this one over on that side. Okay, so we're not going to be looking at that one. So what's going to happen when you take the asymptote that we are going to be looking at? So we're looking at negative pi over 2. What's going to happen to this one? Once you shift that to the left by a factor of pi over 4, well, this is what's going to happen. Okay, so this is what the asymptote looks after you take the negative pi over 2 and then you shift that by a factor of pi over 4 to the left. Now look, the next thing that we're going to do is the point that's right at the origin, okay, that's this point over on this side. The point that's at the origin, we're going to take that and shift that one by a factor of pi over 4 as well. So where would you put that new point? Alright guys, so after you take the point that's at the origin and you shift it by a factor of pi over 4 to the left, this is where the new point is going to be. So it's going to be right at negative pi over 4, which is right in the middle of the distance from 0 up to negative pi over 2. Since the distance from 0 up to negative pi over 2 is negative 90, negative pi over 4, which is negative 45 degrees, has to be right in the center. The next asymptote that we're going to shift to the left by negative pi over 4 is the one that's over on the positive side of the x-axis, and that's the first asymptote that we have over on that side, and this is the one that we're looking at. So we're going to take this asymptote, shift it by a factor of negative pi over 4 to the left. So where would you put that one? Well, again, since the distance from 0 up to pi over 2 is 90, and if you shift something by pi over 4, you're shifting the graph by a factor of 45 degrees, if you think about that in terms of degrees. So this pi over 2 would actually be right in the center, and this is where we're going to put this. Alright guys, you can see that you now have two asymptotes, and then you have the center point, which is already shifted. So at this point, what you can do is you can actually draw the general shape of the tangent function, which starts at the bottom and then increases upwards in the positive y direction. So this is what the first, first period looks like for this function. Alright guys, so this is what the graph looks like as of now. If you were to take the negative pi over 2, shift that to the left, and then you take the other asymptote, which is a pi over 2, and then you shift that to the left, and then take the center point, which was at the origin, the one that's circled in red. If you shift that one over to the left, which is now moved by a factor of pi over 4 to the left, this is what the graph looks like. But you got to make sure that you continue that and do that to the two other asymptotes that you have over on the right hand side. And the reason is because you want to make sure that you extend the graph from 0 all the way up to 2 pi. Now you're going to use that same pattern that we did on the first two asymptotes, and at the end you can get rid of all the stuff that you don't need. So anything that's to the left of 0 and anything that's to the right of 3 pi you're not going to need, because they only want you to graph from 0 up to 3 pi. So it's almost like saying you can get those stuff on the left and right of those 2 points, and at the end you can just go back and erase those points. Okay, so how would the overall graph look like after you're done graphing the complete function? Well, this is what the graph is going to look like. Alright guys, so this is what the final graph looks like after you complete that. Now you can see that if you compare this with the original graph that I have up there, if you guys want to pause the video at this point just to see how it looks, and what I would strongly recommend is that you guys give this a try for yourself and then see if you can come up with this graph on your own. We've already done a part of this, but then you want to make sure that you apply the same pattern, shifting those asymptotes to the left by factor pi over 4, and then also the points in the center, shift those by pi over 4, and at the end, graph them and then see if you can come up with the same graph. What do you notice about these points? This graph ends at 3 pi and starts at 0, and it should, because in the original problem, what do they ask you to do? They want you to graph this from 0 all the way up to 3 pi, and that's why you don't see the graph continuing beyond this point or having a shape before this point. So this is almost like the beginning point, and that's the ending point. And then of course you have the asymptotes in between the points wherever they're supposed to go and stuff. Alright guys,